This one's really exciting. What if I told you as a demon player in Evil Dead the game that you can guess where the survivors are going to be and find them within the first minute of the match almost every time you play demon? And if you're a survivor, that probably doesn't sound too fun. But what you'll see behind me right now is I actually have several examples of footage of us finding the survivors right away based off of using a few key points on the map that have spawned in. My term for this is spawn theory, and there's definitely a lot more that I want to work out to make it precise, but allow me to show you a little bit of what I've discovered with a bit of testing. So let's flip on over to the correct page over here, and initially what you might see here is a bunch of stuff that looks a little confusing. I have a bunch of maps with a bunch of circles and a bunch of things highlighted. Let me break it down so it's not so confusing. First off, what you need to understand is what these circles are. So the blue circles are where the blue objective points are, such as the dagger, such as the Necronomicon pages. The yellow circle is where we spawn as the demon. The red circle is where the survivor ended up spawning, and the white glowy pieces are where the first map piece ended up spawning. Now, I think there's a lot to unpack here, and we haven't even started talking about where the dark ones spawn, because I don't even know how to tell that quite yet. But let me show you a pattern that I found here. Now, one thing you might be wondering right away is why am I representing these areas with such big circles? Well, I'm going to go ahead and show you. If you take a look at this map right here, what I did was I inched back and forth a little bit to see exactly where I get the Amanda is close notification when I'm playing demon. And it was about this distance right here where I started getting that notification. So basically what I ended up doing in Photoshop was I took the circle tool and I went ta-da right where the center of this was. And then I made a circle until it reached where about Amanda was. All right. And then I went ahead and I started plotting all of these different circles around the map because theoretically, this wide circle here is my detection radius of where the survivors could be. And one of the things I've been noticing while I play this game is that the survivors always seem to spawn outside of these circles of protection. So at the beginning of the match, there are 3 circles that the survivors are just not going to spawn in. They are not going to spawn in a circle surrounding the blue objectives, so the dagger and the Necronomicon, and they're not going to spawn within the circle around the demon player. Everything else is fair game, but they do tend to trend in a little bit more of the what's left area. And if you go ahead and you take a look here, actually, I'm going to go ahead and remove the white areas here because these are where the first map pieces spawned. And really the only thing I noticed about the first map pieces was that the survivors tended to be kind of close to it. That's really the only thing I've been able to pull in so far. But if you take a look at all of these different examples, look at all the blue circles and all the yellow circles, and what you'll see with these red circles here, which represent where Amanda spawned, is that there is never at any point an overlap with where Amanda spawned in and where all the objectives were. Not a single time is Amanda inside of a blue circle or inside of the yellow circle. So what this means is that you have yourself a game plan on where to look for the survivors. The way this works out in practice, you're like, okay, God, circles, he's just being a crazy person. The way this works out in practice is, again, this yellow area is your detection radius. This is everything that if they're inside of that zone, you're going to see them. And since you know that they're not going to spawn within the yellow area and they're not going to spawn within the blue areas, you start moving around as the demon player and you start scanning. Now, you're going to get a feel for how big your zone is the more you play demon. This is kind of a feel thing. But as you can see here, this gives me a really good idea of where my path can be on how to find the survivors. So once you start getting a feel for where things are, you start making these kind of hook-shaped maneuvers that allow you to scan the whole map really, really quickly and avoid parts of the map that you just don't need to go ahead and check out. Like down here, we know they're not going to be around in Fishing Village, Terminal Station, all this over here. It's kind of a zone of protection. So what we can do right away in this example is click right here and then just go up like this. And then within that amount of time, I would have already found the survivors. They're already within my zone. And keep in mind, this is only one survivor. There's usually 4 of them and they're scattering a little bit. So it makes it even easier to find them. There are so many examples where you can just find them all the time. Now this right here is the hardest one. But in my mind, what I would do is usually when they're spaced out this far, they kind of like to sit in the middle. So in this scenario, what I would do is I would curve up like this because there's a lot of big loot areas down here. I would curve up like this and go into the middle. But at that point, I would have already found them. every single time you can just go ahead and use the dead space. So in this case right here, what we would do is, again, big space in between them. You just go ahead and do the curve, and I would have ran into them by now. You run the risk of missing them down here, but almost all the time you'll hit them if you do a curve like that. Another example is right here. These overlap, and you can go ahead and just go through. I mean, heck, you can just cut right through the middle here, just go whoop boop, and you would have found them. Because there's no way that they're going to spawn in here or in here. Never do they ever spawn within these zones of protection. When you are playing Demon, start imagining what it's like to have these big circles surrounding the objective points, and then also yourself. And then 9 out of 10 times, you are going to land right on the survivors right away and completely disrupt them early game. And this is so essential right now because people are learning to be quiet. One of the strategies that came up right away in the first couple of days was go ahead and go to the blue point and trap the crap out of it, because they eventually have to go there because you don't know where they are. Well, that's different now. Things are different because we can get an idea of where they're going to be, and you could start harassing them early. Now, if you know how to go ahead and find them really quickly and harass them really, really early, what are you going to do with that? Well, I actually happen to have something to help you out here. So if you go into your collection here, I've been playing a lot of Warlord because Warlord's really good for this because just the way their units are so fast and they get that big Henrietta buff. What I like to do is I have this build right here, and it's basically a basic unit build, and it's all about harassing. Now, you don't need to be level 45 to make this work, by the way. I was doing just fine at like level 20 with this. But the idea is that you just go find them, harass them, and then beat the living crap out of them with your basic units, because they don't have enough time to get pink Fs. They don't have enough time to get really good weapons. And not to mention, a lot of times they split up a little bit at the beginning of the game, so you can target their Cheryl or the support Ashe and just nail them. If you do have a full build here, the ones that I find that are the most important are the heavy damage basic, because let me tell you, I'm hitting for like 130 a piece with my basic units, and then they hit so fast. Oh, it feels so good. I also like to invest in puke, because this is something that keeps the survivors from getting away from you. It makes it so they can't sprint, and it makes it so they can't dodge. And something to know about your Deadites is if you start puking and you hit them, press spacebar and dodge out of the animation, and then charge at them while they're still CC'd and start hitting them. You usually get 1 or 2 free hits in, which is huge in terms of draining the resources. Another thing I really think is important with this build, since you are finding them so fast and you know where to look, investing a bit into your economy is huge. Having extra capacity and then also getting more infernal energy per orb is essential for collapsing in on them and then taking over a unit right away and just pounding them. Because you don't need to spend time trapping everything. You don't need to spend time picking up a bunch of orbs around them. You pick them up as you get over to them, and then you have probably 300 energy at that point, and you can just start blasting them right away. This build feels so good right now with that knowledge of where they're going to spawn. I also like to invest in farts because Henrietta's the fart lord. Another thing about the animation thing is if you spawn in with Henrietta, I've been told that if you press 2 right away to make your fart come out, you skip the whole entering in animation, which allows you to start attacking much faster. This build is all about big possession and basic units. Just absolutely clobber them early before they get a chance to get started. In my mind, that's the best way to disrupt a good team right now, because a good team's going to try to stay quiet and not be found. If you can find them, you get inside their head. Another pro tip is if you go ahead and possess a survivor and shoot a bleeding out teammate, your infernal energy will climb every time you shoot them. So it's a great way to waste ammo and also get a little bit more out of your possession to make it so you can keep them far enough away until the character actually bleeds out. Also, one other thing I'm really curious about is part of me wonders if characters with more HP take a longer time to bleed out. I need to test that, but that's something that I noticed in a stream and I thought it was very interesting, and I want to get some concrete numbers on that. If you want to learn a lot more about this game, please subscribe down below. I'll teach you a bunch of stuff that we've been learning here. Also, I stream just about every single night, twitch.tv/SwingPoynt. And let me know if you guys have any other tips or tricks that you've come up with, or if you know anything else about this spawn theory stuff. This is what I've been able to discover so far, but I can guarantee you there's more nuance to it that we can really start to flesh out in the coming days and weeks. So, thank you guys. You guys are awesome. I really hope this helps, and I'll see you guys in the next video that we do around here.